Welcome to the IFTA Screen Discussion series, putting focus on each of the feature films submitted for this year's IFTA Awards. There are a number of really excellent Irish films that we'll be putting under the spotlight in the coming weeks. But today we are joined by the filmmakers behind the film Anne. It made its world premiere at the Tallinn Black Nights International Film Festival in November of 2022. And we're delighted to hear about the film from some of the key creatives involved. Today, we're joined by Ciaran Creagh, the writer and director, David Grennan, who is the director of photography, Ferdia Doherty, who is the producer, composer Roger Taylor, and lead actress of the film, Zara Devlin. She plays the titular role of Anne. So welcome, everyone. And first of all, congratulations on the film. I found it so beautiful and so moving.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great to be here now.
And you know, I actually remember reading the story on which this film is based a number of years ago. I found it so sad and so, horrifying as well that something like this could happen. So I was wondering if you, Ciaran, or whoever would like to pitch in for when you did hear the true story that Anne is based upon for the first time, and what was that kind of, initial reaction to it?
Yeah, I suppose, I would have been aware of the story when it came out in 1984, as a teenager, and then obviously time passes. And then in 2018, Rosita Boland did a number of articles on Anne Lovett, actually what happened in the grotto and the aftermath. And they were very heart-rending articles, but she very much talked about what went on in the day and very much resonated with me. Just thinking about this poor girl, what she went through on her own. She was 15. Now it's slightly different because say you got YouTube, you can find out everything that you want. Back in 1984, there was no YouTube, might be not book in a library, but how could you actually find out what was going on, what was happening? What would I do in a small, medium-sized middle Ireland town? So it must have been horrific for her. And I suppose that in your mind was the catalyst for me I need to write something about this. And I definitely was very surprised that nothing had been written to date. So I wrote a treatment very quickly. I wrote a script very quickly. It was probably one of the easiest scripts I've ever had to write. And it came together very quickly. I think I might have rewrote it small bits, maybe 4 or 5 times, but that's it, until the script was actually shot. So I think that in itself kind of leads credence to, I suppose, the impact that it had on me as a person. I said I was just really surprised that nothing had been done before it. And if you think about it, it's not even 40 years ago, which is not a lot of time.
Yeah, it's really quite extraordinary. And I was wondering, why was it kind of now that you thought was the time to make this particular movie? Because considering Ireland's recent history, there have been so many revelations, so many huge historical changes as well, just in very recent history.
Well, I suppose, as a writer, I don't have to be for the writers, but for myself, when I find something and see something that really resonates with me, well, then I feel I've got to do something about it. Like my previous film, In View, it was about kind of suicide, whatever, and again, that kind of resonating with me. I just need to do it. I need to write it. And irrespective of whether you get funded or whether you don't, I'm just going to get this done. And it was very much the same with Anne. We started with this kind of process back in 2018. And so, we shot it in June, July 2021. And then we actually had it fully finished in 2022. So it was 4 years in total. But it just came together quickly, and I just think everybody that read it very much jumped on board and realized, yeah, this is a story that should be told. And that's why I said it before, I don't understand why it hadn't been told to this point, because it's such a seminal story for the women of our country. And
absolutely. Ferdia, I'd love to bring you in at this point, because I was just wondering, as a producer of the film, you have to kind of be in the more practical, the pragmatic role. And I was wondering if there was ever a point where there might be a fear that, maybe this story was too raw. Is it too much, or is it too soon for audiences to see? Were those kind of considerations, did they come to mind?
Absolutely not. One of the things, I live in Chicago, and I've lived in the States for almost 25 years. And I met Ciaran through the Chicago Irish Film Festival, which he's been shown at many times. And when he showed me the script, I had obviously known about the story because that's how old I am. And I thought this was definitely a story that needed to be told for many reasons. One being just how far Ireland has come over the past short 10, 15 years with abortion and gay marriage and all of those types of things. And then also perfect timing in any movie is, you know, Roe versus Wade in the United States, which I'm sure you've all read about, kind of went through a very bad period in the last 2 years. So I thought this was just the perfect feature to manage. And we have to give kudos to RTE for backing us with this with the script initially, because without RTE and of course the many investors that helped us put this film together, we wouldn't be here today. And especially people like Zara and Ian Beattie and Eileen Walsh and all the other great cast members and crew that you know, did this during COVID, which was always fun. And of course Ciaran and the team for what they pulled together. So you know, the story itself should have been told a long time ago, but we're thankful that we got it done.
Absolutely, 100%. One of the things I found really striking as I was watching Anne was it was kind of such an unusual way to tell the story, in that you kind of follow one character and then the camera kind of dwells with one and then you start to follow them. And I just found it really striking. So I was wondering for you, David, how did you find taking that very distinct approach in actually shooting and relating the story? Because it is quite distinct and unique, actually.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the approach that we took to it. I mean, I've known Ciaran since we became friends after I shot his first movie, In View. So I was very, I was very involved in the approach of how we were trying to find that visual style, and we really wanted that kind of immersive style of storytelling, where, you know, there was no over embellishments. It was a really kind of natural feel to the story as it progressed, because it is such, as the guys have just talked about, such an important story, and that kind of handheld continuous take kind of, we decided very early on that gave us that kind of immersion. And also Ciaran, you know, we discussed that idea of handing over the camera to the next character, because the town is so important in the story, and those other characters like the family are so important, that was a kind of a key element as well in the narrative.
Yeah, because I found it just very, for me, it was like the form or the style was really reflective of what was happening in the story, because you're in that town space and you're following those characters and there's almost this inescapable intimacy, and you really do kind of end up relating even more so to the character of Anne through following these other characters and moving in this very limited amount of space, if that kind of makes sense.
No, absolutely, very much so. I mean, that's great that came across, because it is that, like, you know, Ciaran, we wanted to stay very much with Anne, with Zara, but we had to open up the film a little bit more, especially because it takes place over 13 hours. And that kind of, the ability to switch and hand over the camera between those characters very much helped us do that, like, you know, to delve into the story more. You know, and the camera was very much an observer in what was going on. And, you know, I think I think we started with something like, in our shot list, we started with something like 200 shots, but then we never intended keeping that many. And then when we got to Boyle and we walked around Boyle for about a week doing about 30,000 steps a day, we kind of deconstructed that shot list to about, I think, 87, Ciaran, in total in the end.
Yeah, 87, yeah.
About 87, you know, and we really choreographed all of that through prep. But it was all there, like, you know, pre-production and the shooting. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad all that came across, because I mean, there's some very definite moments that were planned in there, but it also became, the camera became, with the actors like Zara and Eileen, so it was very much a dance as well, you know, in that kind of scenario, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to ask a little more actually, particularly about the casting of well, particularly of Anne, because Zara, you're really extraordinary in that role. So Ciaran, would you mind telling us a little bit about that process and how you found your actors?
Yeah, some were easy, some were very difficult. In case of say Eileen, for example, I always had her in mind. And then we were going to shoot it and she wasn't available. And then it kind of pushed a wee bit. And then she was back available, and we got her for a week. Like, you know, we had to fit everything for Eileen in a week, so it was a bit of a challenge, but we got it done. Ian Beattie was pretty straightforward as well. We had a connection to Ian, like, you know, and he read it and he loved it, and he just wanted to do it no matter what. Then obviously, then the main one that was going to be difficult was the character of Anne. I mean, like, you know, we were in lockdown, so what we did is we contacted all the agents in Ireland, and we got about 35 actors who submitted tapes to us. And then, like, very much, I do work with a team, like, you know, with the guys, like, you know, Dave and our editor, Tony Cranston, like, you know, with Cappy here today. And we narrowed it down to 35 to 7. Then I met the 7 girls. And I did some taping, which Dave Grennan consistently slagged me out. It was so bad, so bad. We met. It was enough. We met the 7, and we all came to the conclusion that Zara was the one, and I think we definitely made the right decision. And I mean, it is a very difficult process when you try and hook for somebody, and because a lot. I mean, you want to have. Because I mean, like Zara, the character of Anne, she only speaks once in the whole film, in one scene. I mean, like, you know, so it's quite a difficult feat for some actors to pull off. Like, you know, so you really have to have that going on within you and within your face for it to work. And Zara definitely had that, and I think we're all very much agreed, like, you know, that we were so lucky to get her, and she's such a great choice for the film.
Absolutely, 100%. And Zara, I'm curious about what was the, you know, audition process like from your perspective?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I remember hearing about this story when I was at school, but I completely forgot about her name. It wasn't something that was talked about. And I remember then when I got told about auditioning for this, I remember I looked the story up and it just brought me back. It's like, that's the story I was told when I was about 12 or something like that. And just from the get-go and from reading the script, I just, you know, there's certain scripts you read and stories that, yeah, you just have to do it, you know. I really felt it from the start that I just had to be involved in this, you know. And when I met Ciaran, I could feel his passion. I could feel it, and all the people involved. I could feel the passion in this, where we want to you know, all of us come together and make this film. And so I was really delighted, and it's I can't tell you what an honor it is to get to. It just blows my mind that I've actually got a chance to portray Anne and tell her story. It kind of gives me chills when I think about it, because it's such I've never heard anything like it. And when we were filming, I so many times I could feel, it's like I could feel her ghost with me, or it was an experience I'll never forget.
Absolutely, I can only imagine. And Ciaran kind of touched on it there, but yeah, it is something that's very striking in the film, and that, like, your character, you know, she does have so little dialogue. So I was wondering what kind of, you know, preparation went into that, in terms of, you know, kind of bringing that emotion, because you pretty much, and you do an extraordinary job at, like, so much of it is kind of carried in the way you walk and your facial expressions and stuff like that. I can't imagine what it's like to prepare for a role like that. So could you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, I think it's funny when you're portraying someone who existed, you kind of want to bring your own, for me anyway, your own kind of thing to it. So I kind of, to be honest, I didn't prepare too much because I wanted it to be alive. I wanted to experience these. I wanted, when I saw a particular character to come, I wanted to experience it for the first time and not prepare how I was going to feel about it. Or so it all kind of happened when I was speaking to Ciaran on the set, and I felt like that was the kind of approach to take with this kind of film, and with the way Dave filmed it with the camera. And yeah, I felt like it's, I don't know, sometimes too much preparation for these things, for me anyway, can kind of I don't know, stiffen a performance, you know. And I wanted to bring my own, if I was on how I would be feeling about the situations as well, you know. That's all I could do. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that everyone's going to kind of watch this film, Anne, and relate to, or at least get to, like, understand a different character, like what happens with the little sister. And then when you read that title at the end, it's so tragic. And then there's, you know, the story of the father who doesn't know what to do, and the local busybody and the priest and everything. I found myself just so struck by the mother's performance in the film by Eileen Walsh, and she's extraordinary. And I recognized her immediately from her role in The Magdalene Sisters, and that was a film that I ended up thinking about quite a lot. I think because obviously they're both looking at the historical, really awful treatment of, you know, women in Ireland. And I was wondering, for you, Ciaran, when you were casting Eileen, was that, you know, a role that was in, you know, the back of your mind, or something that you were thinking about, or was it, or is that just kind of a little connection I made in my head that was totally unintended?
No, absolutely not. I mean, like, as far as I remember, The Magdalene Sisters was directed by Peter Mullen, who was one of my favorite actors. I think he's amazing what he can do as an actor. And I would not have seen the film a couple of times. And yes, it's all floating around in your head. I mean, but Eileen has such a diverse career, and we all remember Pure Mule, and no matter what she does, she just brings something to it. And, like, you know, when you're thinking of a role like that and you're writing it, this is the Irish Mammy. The Irish Mammy in 1980 was different to the Irish Mammy in 2020. And I think you have to have the chops to actually come along to be able to play that, and have whatever's inside to bring it out. Like any good actor, like Zara or Eileen or Ian, like, you know, you could be talking to whatever to them, like, you know, but they have this inside. And when you see Eileen's face in all the different films and the stage she's been on, like, you know, she just has that. And you just know when you cast something like that, they're going to turn up and they're going to know exactly what they're supposed to do, because they're not thinking about it to make it. It's just coming from the inside. And every good actor, it just comes from the inside. I think if you have to rationalize it and think about it and learn, I think you're in trouble as an actor. I think you need to have it from, this is my own opinion now, you need to have it inside and it just comes out. So as Zara said, and she rocks up on the scene, like, you know, she's waiting to see what happens, and she's seeing how she'll react to that. She knows the character, she knows what it's about, etc. And it's just her reaction to that. And that's what always reads true, I think, when you see an actor on screen or on stage. And Eileen has that in spades for sure.
Roger, I'd like to bring you in here, because I wanted to ask as well about the music for the film. It is such an emotional story. There's so much that's unsaid and has to be communicated through the music. So can you tell us a bit about, you know, the challenges of composing for a story like this?
Yeah, well, I think, I think that actually helped, to be honest. The way it was shot, and because there was a lot of the time there was little dialogue in a sense. So the picture was telling you what was going on, but that allowed hopefully that the music could then just support what you were seeing. And Ciaran was really good in the sense of he in a way he let me play my part in it, in the sense that you got that freedom. And unusually, because there is limited edits, you weren't fighting for a cut or anything like that. You could actually flow with it. And that was, in a sense, I think that was quite unique, that you were allowed to do that. That doesn't happen that often. So that made it a lot easier, actually, you know. And the performances, I mean, Zara in particular, there's a number of scenes that really could have turned out quite wrong, in a sense, unbelievable, but it wasn't. She did a phenomenal job, I think. You know, where you could then hopefully support it without taking over. I mean, I was a bit conscious of taking over because of little dialogue, and hopefully it has supported and not, you know, overturned the picture with a bit of luck.
Yeah, and I think that, at least this was kind of my interpretation, the music did stand in particularly for Anne's dialogue, because there is so little of it, and most of the music does revolve around things that are happening to her. Would that have been something that was kind of consciously happening, or?
Yeah, that discussions with Tony Cranston, the editor, and Ciaran, it soon became apparent within days, really. I only got involved at the edit stage. But I mean, it came clear that really music went alongside Anne most of the time. That isn't the case, of course, you know, when unfortunately she died, but it was to do with Anne, and we kept it that way, and we kept it that you know, the music didn't even start. It was a cold start, as you might say, where there was no music until in the bathroom scene. Which I think was the right thing to do. You know, you could have played earlier, but I don't think that would have been right to do neither. You know, but it was really enjoyable you felt it, you felt the film, and I think that's really important as a composer, that if you're so in it while you're watching it. I mean, I played the basis of it live while I was watching it, not the first take or anything like that. What I mean is, I just kept playing around to see what felt, and that can't happen that often, because you had such space. You knew there wasn't a cut for, might have been 3-4 minutes, you know, and I think that makes it very special.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose I want to talk to a number of you, just because it was such a huge scene, and it obviously involves such a huge collaborative effort. But the birth scene, it is quite graphic, and it's disturbing and very, very tragic. It's horrific. So I was hoping to chat through a few of you about, you know, your roles in kind of staging and then the actual filming of that scene. So I suppose I'll start with you, Zara, just in terms of, because your performance in that scene is really amazing, and how do you even begin to prepare and act out, you know, something like that's happening?
Do you know, it helped a lot because each scene would have been 3 to 4 minutes long. So when they said action, when Ciaran said action, I would be in my position in the grotto, and I know that they wouldn't be coming to me for about 3-4 minutes almost. So I had that time before they arrived to be there. And I can't tell you what that felt like. And sometimes it would be raining, and it was quite lonely, and again, I could feel her there, and it was just this. So I think there was something in having those few minutes to be by myself before everyone arrived, it was kind of amazing, and I think that that's what really got me into that zone. Just the loneliness of it, and it's funny, like once you kind of get into that, it something else takes over, and it's like something else took over, you know. And I really enjoyed doing that and really letting go and really, yeah, trying just to imagine what that was like. And to be 15, how scary would that have been to just to have no one, and you know, seeing all the blood, and it just, yeah, couldn't, yeah, just to really, what would that have been like for her, 15, you know? So yeah.
Well, the final product is really powerful, and it's interesting you're talking about kind of almost like feeling a bit out of body as you performed it, because that's almost like what it's like watching it, but that is what you'd be like in that situation, because it is unimaginable, you know, how could this be happening to me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll never forget it, and I've never done anything like that, and I don't think I ever will, you know. It was like a, you know, spiritual or something else, you know.
And for you, David, what was it like filming that scene? Because you were talking before about, you know, having, you know, shot by shot extensively prepared. I would have imagined for a scene like this that would have had to be, you know, extensively prepared as well.
Funny enough, when I said that, yeah, I mean, we prepared a lot, but it was a scene like that with Zara was in fact very unprepared in some ways, because a bit like the way Zara was discussing there, it was a scene that had such an important moment in the movie, a harrowing moment in the movie. And I remember myself and Ciaran kind of discussing it, saying I just needed to go in with Zara and just really react to what was happening. You know, I mean, it was a very emotional day. I remember very well, like Zara does, and we shot it like in the grounds of a real church, you know, and it was yeah, the kind of really very similar to how Zara explains it. I mean, honestly, I think we did about maybe 5 or 6 takes, if I remember, and I don't think I ever probably did the same thing exactly, you know, on each take, because you really, it all became about kind of just reacting to what was happening, you know, because the way, and it's rare that you're in that scenario where you can feel 100% the emotion that's coming from the actor, and it's all just like so powerful, you know. It's the only way I have to explain it. But yeah, so it was it was a tough day, but I think we on everybody, but I think, you know, I think we did the best service to that moment we could.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for you, Ciaran, as you know, director of that scene, David and Zara would have touched on it already, and I suppose you have to manage that balance of, you know, having your vision as a director, but then also allowing for this creative space. And when you're depicting something as kind of, you know, graphic and sensitive as a moment like this, yeah, I was just wondering what was kind of the biggest challenge, and how were you able to kind of manage that balance?
Yeah, well, I suppose like Zara had 2 scenes in the grotto. Like one was more graphic, the second was more graphic than the first. And I think very much with the first scene, I mean, like, you know, it was let Dave and let Zara go. And I'd definitely be in the camp where you surround yourself with brilliant people, and just give them the space to do what they need to do, because sometimes there's just too much direction. I mean, it does become staged. So in this case, it's a perfect example to let the people just go. For the second scene, we did sit down for a while with Zara, myself and Dave. We kind of split into 3 bits. Would I say whatever for a certain period of time, second period of time, third period of time, to achieve something within those 3 times. But then there's still that freedom. We didn't know what was going to happen. It's just at the end you have to hit a certain whatever. And because Dave is so reactive with the camera, and then Zara is just there with Dave with the camera, like, you know, it just works out so well. And I mean, obviously it was thinking about it before we did it. It was a big worry for me, like, you know, but in the end, I mean, because of the people involved, like, you know, it just worked out amazing. As I said, there was no real direction being given in those scenes. I mean, like, that was the people involved doing it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's probably is so raw and it works so well.
That's really interesting. Like, was that a challenge, or did it feel like more natural as a director? Because it almost sounds like you just kind of stepped back a bit, you know, which is really, it's quite interesting, you know.
You know, I honestly, I mean, I can't remember the exact quote, but Alfred Hitchcock did give a quote where an actor came up and looking for a direction. He says, "Well, I'm the director and you're the actor, so act." But it's when you have these good people who are so in tune with their feelings, what they're doing. Is, I mean, if you step into that, you're going to put a wall between that, like, you know. So my own particular take is that I let people do what they're doing, and then if they're not hitting stuff that I need, I might just say whatever, like, you know. But I think if you put walls from the start of something, you might be missing out on something that you'll never get. And that's why, especially in those sort of situations, you need to just let the people do what they do and to see where it goes. And then if you see change or things to improve or just some stuff to help them, well, then you go for it. But I mean, it's just, as I said, just because when people are so tuned with it, I mean, sometimes a step in is just you're just going to ruin it, to be honest.
And yeah, then finally for you, Roger, composing the music for that scene. I think you mentioned, was that the scene you were playing some music during, or am I thinking of something else? Sorry.
No, both the in the grotto and when she was giving birth.
Okay.
Was both of them really. I tried to play as I was watching, only because it made me be there. Now, it had only, of course, been one instrument at that time. I mean, on the birth scene, there's only the idea. My idea there was that she was so alone that it should have been one instrument, and that was, as it turns out, piano. But that was because she was there. I mean, it must have been gruesome that she was all on her own. You know, obviously never given birth before, outside in the cold, all that. So my idea was, I reacted, my fingers reacted to what I was watching, really. And I think that's the only way I could have done it, actually. I think if, in a way, if you thought about it too much, a bit like what Ciaran's saying, with it could feel staged in that sense. But, you know, if anything, once I played it, I would take out notes and try, piano notes, you know, to make it less. Because if you're not careful, you can put too much in it. You know what I mean? You want that space. You want to hear the person breathing or in pain, or, you know, but also you want to react to it as well. So I suppose it's a bit of a balance between the two, I would say.
Well done to you to all, because it's such an incredible, powerful scene. I was hoping to ask next, and maybe I can start with you, Ferdia. How did you all feel, you know, watching the film for the first time? I found it all consuming in its emotionality, really. And, you know, was the final product, you know, what you kind of thought it might be, you know, when you started the process of making the film?
Well, just to step back a little bit to the scene in the grotto, just kind of a behind the scenes thought, the baby Pat, who Anne had given birth to in the scene. I just want to give a shout out to Frank Carr, who helped us procure that baby. And that was one of the things that that scene was towards the end of the shoot, because we couldn't find a baby in the UK, in Ireland, or in the US for that particular scene. So just a behind the scenes type of thing is that we found a company in Limerick, I believe, that that made the baby for us and delivered it by hand, and obviously that I think helped Zara, you know, Zara's performance, of course, in that scene. The first time I saw the first edit, it was in black and white, because Ciaran and I had talked. Ciaran had mentioned that maybe this film is a black and white film, and I saw it for the first time with my wife and my Sicilian friend and his wife on a holiday after the shoot in St. Martin, and the three that weren't involved cried almost the entire time through the movie, which had no music. The editing, of course, wasn't done. It was just a quick edit. So that was the first time I saw it. And I mean, at that point, I just knew, just from the performances and from Dave's camera work and obviously Ciaran's direction, that we were on to something great. But I knew that from the script. You know, when I first read the script, I just thought this was going to be an amazing movie. And I think because of the way it was shot and the uniqueness of how it was shot, with the camera passing at every interaction with a new person, I thought that just made it even more powerful. And I think we haven't talked about it. The town of Boyle, that acted as Grennan, really just brought the film alive. And we were so lucky that it was COVID, so we were lucky that it was kind of empty. And so the people of Boyle and the county council and everybody in Boyle and that helped us make this, only for them, it would not have turned out as good as it has.
Would anybody else like to pitch in with kind of your, you know, initial reactions to seeing the film completed?
Well, I will first then. It was, I mean, I saw it and I was delighted because I knew he had it. You know, like, you know, and it's kind of, when you do something, and I remember like every time we shot a scene, we would, myself and Dave would look at it, make sure we're happy. But you never know when you, because I mean, like, it's a bit of a risk when you write a script like the sort of script that it was, that you can actually get this down and actually work as a film. And when I saw it, then I knew it was working. And I was delighted. I don't know anybody else, but
yeah. I mean, I'd echo that. I mean, for me, I was honestly very proud of the film. I think we did the story justice, and we had an incredible crew who worked really hard, from costume, hair, makeup, and a particular shout out to my focus puller, Dave Boyle, who somehow managed to keep it all in focus. I don't know how even now. Yeah, I just think, you know, it's right from the very first conversations I had with Ciaran, and then to watch it for the very first time with you know, a certain amount of temp music in Tony Cranston's house where he was editing was yeah, it was a strong moment to see that it all come together.
You know, I think one of the unique things about this movie is that how it translates across countries as well. I mean, we've shown it obviously in Tallinn, Estonia, and to a full house, which was amazing. And I've shown it in the States, and it translates so beautifully, and that people just get this powerful story and what happened to this poor, unfortunate 15-year-old girl.
I think it's like a film like, I can't compare it to anything else and any other style of film I've ever seen. And I just think it's so unique in that way. And like, as the lead actor, it's always strange for me to watch myself. But it was the first thing I ever watched where I felt really removed from it, actually. Like I forgot it was me, because I was so involved in the story, and I had to keep reminding myself that that's me doing that. You know, it was kind of cool that way, because usually I'm kind of can't watch myself and cringing, but it's because of what the story was, and it was about everything else, and it was yeah, I had chills the whole time. I thought it was, yeah, really, really proud of it, and I'll always be so honored that I got to portray Anne. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you think about it, it's bigger than all of us. And I think when we worked, everybody, it was all about the film. And I think we all worked to the film, the actors, all the crew, people in Boyle, everyone else involved. It was bigger than all of us. And I think that's what everybody kind of bought into. And that's probably why it turned out like it did, I think, because it was first more so than anything else.
Yeah, amazing.
Sorry, I agree with Zara actually with that, and in a sense of, I think it's just so very different the way it was shot, the subject matter, how raw it was, and personally, I'm just really proud to have been involved in it. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think I have time for just one last question, and it's another one to just, you know, throw out to all you guys, whoever wants to pitch in. But yeah, I was just curious because, you know, Anne has had its world premiere at this point, and I was just wondering, have there been any reactions to the film that maybe, you know, took you by surprise, that maybe an audience member kind of came up and said it had, you know, this effect on me? I know I've used the word emotional a lot to describe this film, but for me, that is, you know, what it was at its heart. So yeah, I suppose I was just wondering about, you know, some of those personal reactions that audience members have had thus far to Anne.
Well, I'll jump in just with, sorry, Ciaran, I'll jump in just with one in the States.
No, he was a producer.
One of the things that that I think was surprising shooting this, as Zara alluded to, was kind of the connection to Anne and the connection to Grennan and the connection to the story. We had a number of people on the shoot who actually were from Grennan, which we only found out a number of days into the shoot. There were people who worked in Boyle that knew of the story and knew people who were connected to. And when I showed it in the States, in Chicago, at the Music Box Theater, I had 4 people in the audience from Grennan.
Wow.
And their reaction, and they were old enough to remember this time, and they were old enough to remember the family, and old enough to remember just how harrowing the story was. And out of that, also another person who watched it, his wife's best friend in New York was one of Anne's sister's friends. So during this whole like pre-post showing it, just the connection to Anne just really, I think, told us that this was a story that we just bloody had to tell. And I think that was just a very unique part of showing it across borders as well.
Yeah, well, what I would say is, say we were in Tallinn and we did the Q&A after they saw the film. I mean, the audience were clued in. And these are Estonians in the country, thousands of miles away from Grennan and from Ireland. And they were so clued in. The questions they asked, they were very specific questions on different elements of the film, like, you know, and when you get that, you really feel, yeah, I mean, this is something else. I mean, it's also shown at Cairo, the Cairo National Film Festival, and also the International Film Festival of India. So here you've people, Egyptians, and we have Indians who, again, thought this film, they really want to show this film in their pretty significant festivals, like, you know. So again, it's like it's such a small little Irish story, but yet it just spreads out around the world and people just get it. And I think it's because it's a simple story. It's about a little girl in a very bad place, and dealt a very bad hand of cards. I think that's what it all boils down to. That's what people relate to. It's about this 15-year-old girl.
I think that's the perfect note to leave this discussion on. Thank you all so much for joining me today to talk about your extraordinary movie, Anne. And congratulations again. It's really just so beautiful, so wonderful. I can't wait for everyone to see it across the world.
Thanks very much now.
Thank you. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you, Deirdre. Thank you, IFTA.